I thought pressure would disappear once I made it, that once I reached this level, things would finally feel lighter, more stable, more secure. I believed the hardest part was getting here. I was wrong. Nobody tells you that pressure doesn't go away after success. It changes shape. It gets quieter, heavier, and more personal. Before, pressure came from wanting something. Now it comes from having something to lose. Expectations don't sit outside you anymore. They live inside your head. Every decision feels watched. Every mistake feels louder, even when no one says a word. When I first arrived, everything looked the same from the outside. Same court, same jersey, same routine, but inside it, everything felt different. I wasn't fighting for opportunity anymore. I was fighting to protect it. And that shift changes how you think, how you prepare, and how you carry yourself. Suddenly, you're not asking, can I make it? You're asking, can I stay here? That question creates a kind of pressure talent cannot fix, because talent doesn't quiet your thoughts at night. It doesn't stop you from replaying moments over and over in your head. It doesn't remind you that one bad stretch doesn't define you. At this level, pressure isn't loud or dramatic. It's constant. It's the awareness that you're being measured every single day, even when you're not performing. This was the part of success I didn't expect, the part nobody warned me about, the part that doesn't show up in highlights or interviews. And understanding this pressure, learning how to live with it instead of fighting it, became one of the most important lessons of my journey. Because making it wasn't the finish line, it was the beginning of a different kind of challenge. At first, I tried to ignore that pressure. I told myself it was normal, that everyone at this level feels it, and maybe that's true, but knowing something is normal doesn't make it easier to carry. What surprised me most was how subtle it was. No one was yelling. No one was doubting me out loud. Yet I felt constantly evaluated every practice, every game, every small decision. It felt like there was no off switch anymore. Before, pressure pushed me forward. It motivated me. It gave me energy. Now it followed me everywhere. Even on good days, there was a voice reminding me that consistency mattered more than moments. That one strong performance didn't buy you safety. That nothing here was guaranteed. And once that thought settles in, it changes how you experience success. Wins feel shorter. Relief replaces joy. And instead of celebrating, you immediately think about what comes next. I also notice how pressure changes your relationship with mistakes. Earlier in my career, mistakes felt like part of learning here. They felt heavier, not because of punishment, but because of consequence. A small error didn't just affect a play, it stayed with you. It made you question yourself. It made you more cautious. And if you're not careful, that caution slowly turns into hesitation. That's when pressure becomes dangerous. This was the moment I realized pressure at the top level isn't about performance alone. It's about identity. You start tying your sense of belonging to how well you hold up under expectation. You don't want to be the weak link. You don't want to be the one who slips. And carrying that responsibility every day requires a kind of mental strength no one really prepares you for. I began to understand that learning how to play wasn't enough anymore. I had to learn how to think differently, how to separate my value from my last performance, how to stay present instead of living inside future consequences. Because at this level, the game isn't just physical, it's psychological. And pressure doesn't test your talent, it tests your balance. There were moments when I caught myself playing not to fail instead of playing to grow. That's what pressure does when it goes unchecked. It doesn't attack your ability, it attacks your freedom. You hesitate just enough to be late, you choose the safer option instead of the right one. And slowly, without realizing it, you start shrinking your own game to protect yourself from criticism you haven't even received. What made it harder was that nothing was visibly wrong. I was still performing, still competing, still showing up from the outside. Everything looked fine, but internally, the weight was there. A constant awareness that every opportunity mattered, that every moment was being stored somewhere, measured, remembered. Pressure didn't scream, it whispered, and those whispers were the hardest part to silence. I also realized how lonely pressure can feel at this level. Not because people don't support you, but because they expect you to handle it. Once you've made it, struggle is no longer something you're allowed to openly carry. You're supposed to be strong, capable, ready, and admitting that the pressure feels heavier than expected can feel like weakness even when it isn't. That's when I understood something important. Pressure isn't end proof that you're failing. It's proof that you've arrived somewhere that demands more of you. But arriving doesn't automatically mean you know how to stay balanced. There, balance has to be learned. And learning it requires honesty with yourself more than anyone else. I stopped asking why the pressure felt so heavy and started asking what it was trying to teach me. Because pressure, when you listen to it instead of fighting it, reveals where your foundations are weak, where your confidence depends too much on outcomes, where your identity is tied too closely to performance. This wasn't a breaking point, it was a turning point. The moment I realized pressure wasn't something to escape, it was something to understand. There was a point where I stopped trying to carry the pressure alone, not by talking about it publicly, not by making it visible, but by changing how I responded to it internally. I realized that fighting pressure only made it louder. The more I tried to ignore it, the more it followed me. So instead of pushing it away, I started acknowledging it. I let it exist without letting it define me. That shift didn't happen overnight. It started with small moments, taking a breath before reacting, letting mistakes pass without replaying them endlessly, reminding myself that one moment doesn't represent the whole picture. These weren't dramatic changes, but they were powerful. Because for the first time, I felt like I had space again. Not freedom from pressure, but freedom within it. I also learned that pressure feels overwhelming when your focus is too wide. When you try to control outcomes instead of actions. I stopped thinking about expectations and started narrowing my attention to what was actually in front of me. The next possession, the next decision, and the next responsibility. Pressure thrives when your mind lives in the future. It weakens when you bring it back to the present. Slowly, my relationship with pressure changed. It no longer felt like a threat waiting to expose me. It felt like information, a signal that I cared, that I was invested, that what I was doing mattered. And once I saw it that way, pressure lost some of its power. It didn't disappear, but it stopped dictating my behavior. This was the moment I understood something important. Confidence at this level isn't about feeling fearless. It's about staying steady even when fear is present. It's about knowing that pressure will show up and trusting yourself to handle it anyway. That kind of confidence isn't loud or visible, but it's strong and it's built intentionally. I wasn't becoming immune to pressure. I was becoming capable of carrying it. Over time, I realized that pressure never actually leaves you at the top level. It just changes how it speaks to you. Earlier, it sounded like doubt, like fear of losing what I had worked for. Now, it started sounding like responsibility, a reminder that what I was doing mattered, not just to me. But to everyone around me, that shift didn't make the pressure lighter, but it made it meaningful. I began trusting myself in a different way, not by expecting perfection, but by accepting imperfection without panic. I stopped seeing pressure-filled moments as tests I had to pass and started seeing them as situations I had prepared for. That distinction changed how I played, how I thought, and how I recovered from setbacks. Confidence stopped being something I waited to feel. It became something I practiced. I also learned that pressure exposes your habits more than your talent. When things get tight, you don't rise to your potential. You fall back on what you've repeatedly done. That understanding pushed me to refine my routines, not just physically, but mentally. How I reset after mistakes, how I talk to myself internally, how quickly I refocus. These things don't show up on the stat sheet, but they decide how long you last. This phase taught me patience in a way nothing else could. Not patience for results, but patience with myself. I stopped demanding instant proof that I was handling pressure correctly. Instead, I focused on consistency, showing up with the same intention every day. That steadiness slowly replaced anxiety with clarity. Pressure didn't disappear, but it stopped feeling like a weight pulling me down. It started feeling like something I could stand on. At some point, I realized that pressure wasn't the enemy I had imagined it to be. The real danger was misunderstanding it. And when pressure feels overwhelming, it's usually because you're trying to carry it with the wrong mindset. You treat it like a warning instead of a signal, like a threat instead of a responsibility. Once I understood that, something shifted inside me. I stopped measuring my days by outcomes and started measuring them by intention. Did I stay present? Did I stay composed? Did I execute what I prepared for? That change didn't make every day feel good, but it made every day feel purposeful. And purpose is what steadies you when confidence feels unstable. I also became more honest with myself about expectations, not the ones placed on me by others, But the ones I placed on myself, I realized that much of the pressure I felt wasn't external at all. It was internal. It came from trying to prove I belonged even after I had already earned my place. Letting go of that need to prove was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was also one of the most freeing. As I grew more comfortable with pressure, I noticed how differently I moved through it. I wasn't rushing moments anymore. I wasn't playing ahead of the game. I trusted that being steady was more powerful than being perfect. And that trust didn't come from talent. It came from experience, from learning the hard way that pressure doesn't disappear when you succeed. It follows you, asking who you've become now that you're here. This stage of the journey didn't come with applause. It came with quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need reassurance, the kind that holds up when things go wrong. And for the first time, pressure stopped feeling like something I had to survive. It felt like something I had learned to live with. Looking back now, I understand that the pressure I didn't expect wasn't a mistake in the journey. It was part of the journey. It was the cost of growth. And the moment you reach a higher level, life stops asking whether you're capable and starts asking whether you're ready to carry responsibility without losing yourself. And that question doesn't get answered in one season or one performance. It gets answered slowly through how you respond when things feel heavy. Pressure taught me that success doesn't make life easier. It makes it more demanding. It demands clarity. It demands emotional control. It demands a stronger relationship with yourself. And once you accept that, pressure stops feeling unfair. It starts feeling honest, like a reminder that what you're doing matters enough to challenge you. I no longer wish pressure would disappear. I respect it now because it showed me where I needed to grow, where my confidence needed to mature, and where my mindset needed to evolve. Without it, I would have stayed comfortable. With it, I became more intentional, more grounded, and more aware of who I am beyond performance. If you're watching this and you're feeling overwhelmed after reaching a new level in your own life, a new job, a new responsibility, a new version of success, you're not alone. That pressure isn't a sign that you're failing. It's a sign that you've stepped into a space that requires more of you. And learning how to carry that weight is part of becoming who you're meant to be next. Success doesn't remove pressure. It reveals whether you're ready for it. So if you want more honest stories about growth, mindset, and the realities behind reaching the top, stay here. Subscribe. We'll keep talking about the parts no one warns you about,